Good afternoon, everybody. My name is First Class Eric Bertulaitis. I am a first class cadet at the Academy, which is a senior. I have a PowerPoint that I'll share with you right now, and then I'll go through it. I'd like to just tell you a little bit about my experiences at the Academy. Everybody has a little bit of different experiences, but these are mine, and some of them are going to be common to all cadets, and some won't be. So just a little bit about me. I'm from Frederick, Maryland originally. I'm the class of 2021, so I am a senior, like I mentioned, and I study naval architecture and marine engineering at the Academy. So a little bit about my path to get to the Academy. I was, in fact, a Sea Cadet myself. I basically found the Coast Guard through Sea Cadets. I staffed a couple recruit trainings at Cape May, which is where the Coast Guard holds the Coast Guard's recruit training, and kind of realized, like, oh, the Coast Guard's a thing, which I had never really thought of before. I kind of always wanted to be in the Marine Corps. My dad was in the Marine Corps. And so then I found a locally arranged training with Coast Guard Station Annapolis, in my case, but it can be with any Coast Guard station. And so I guess my first thing to pass on is, if you're at all interested in the Coast Guard, I highly recommend trying to spend a week at one of these stations. It's pretty easy to do if you can find a station nearby that's willing to take you in for the week. Following graduation from high school, I applied to the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, and Marine Corps ROTC, and did not get accepted to any of them. So I went and did Marine Corps ROTC and studied aerospace and mechanical engineering for a year at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute on non-scholarship ROTC, and then reapplied to all of those sources: the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy, and a scholarship for ROTC. And I was thrilled because my second application around, I got into the Coast Guard Academy, which had pretty much been my first choice all along. And so I, of course, accepted my appointment and reported in, and here I am. Just a little bit about like a day in my life. I get up at about 4:20 in the morning in a normal year, forgetting about COVID momentarily. I would get up at about 4:20 in the morning for a morning hockey practice. We practice at the Connecticut College, which is just across the way. And so we get their morning ice because they get their evening ice. So then at 0500, I'm at hockey practice, and then come back after, get showered, do what I need to do, grab some breakfast, and then classes start at 0800 and run until 1200. And so just to clarify on that a little bit, that doesn't necessarily mean you have class that entire time. You may or may not have a class in every period. Maybe you have all 4 of those periods filled up, or maybe you have none of them. It could be either way, but that time is designated as class time. And then at 1200, there's a formation and a noon meal at roughly 1200. It varies a little bit. And then after the noon meal, you go back to classes until 1600. And then 1600 to 1800 is when most sports teams practice. It's called sports period. But because I have hockey in the morning, that time is free for me. So from 1600 until, for pretty much the rest of the night, I can do homework, go to the gym, spend time with some friends, go to dinner at some point in there. It's pretty much my time to do what I need to do, unless there's something scheduled, some meeting or something like that scheduled. And then I tend to go to bed at about 11:30 at night, sometimes a little bit earlier, sometimes a little bit later. One thing about the Academy is it's more like regular college than you'd probably think or imagine, or maybe you've heard it's like super locked down and there's no freedom. And it's more locked down than a regular college, but there's still plenty of freedom to get out and do the things that you want. One thing that's great is you become close friends with really all of your classmates. The Coast Guard Academy is about 270 people in a class, as opposed to, say, the Naval Academy, where you're looking at about 1,000 people in a class. So our whole school is about the size of one class at one of the big 3 academies. I enjoy knowing pretty much everybody in my class. It makes it more personal, more friendly. Pretty much always see people, walking around the hallways and stuff like that, and you wave to them and you know them by name and things like that. So that's nice. There's also plenty to do in the area to get out on the weekends. You can go skiing, in the winter, obviously hiking. There's some beaches nearby where people like to go either just hang out on surf up in Rhode Island. There's ferries out to Block Island and some of the other surrounding islands over to Long Island, things like that that you can get out and do. On a long weekend, Boston and New York City are both about 2 hours away, so very easy to get to and spend a weekend in one of the cities. So that's all really nice. It gives you things to do and kind of enjoy that normal college experience of getting out and seeing some stuff. Another, in my opinion, kind of misconception about the academy is that the academics are super rigorous and way more difficult than anywhere else. I think that when you look at the academy, it's a top school in pretty much every major that we offer, and so I think the classwork compares pretty similarly to any other top school in a similar major. So, if you're an engineering major, a top engineering school is gonna have similar classes to what you might find at the academy. I think where academics is a little bit different is we have more credits that we have to take, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. The last thing I want to mention is that there's still breaks from school. That's another common misconception, is that there's just never breaks. We still get a spring break, which is a full week. There's still a Thanksgiving break when you can go home to your family for Thanksgiving, and there's still a winter break, just like you'd find at any other school. The biggest difference is the summer break. Instead of going home for 2 or 3 months like you might at a regular college, we go home for 3 weeks, and the rest of it we work. But I'll talk about that a little bit more later. It's work, but it's also fun. So a little bit about those extra credits. What really makes the academics harder is these extra credits that we have to take. And when I say extra credits, it's just extra classes that everybody has to take that wouldn't necessarily be the case at other schools. So we could call them gen eds, I guess, but everybody takes calculus, chemistry, and physics, which would be pretty typical of an engineering major, but not necessarily for a government major or a management major. And then everybody also takes things like government, morals and ethics, criminal justice, which conversely might be pretty typical for a government major at another school, but not really typical for an engineering major. Additionally, everybody takes navigation. There's a class, at least one class, each of the 4 years that's focused on navigation, professional maritime studies. And that's just a small listing. There's others too that everybody is required to take, but this is a good sampling of it. In my opinion, the best part of the academy, what really makes all of the difficulty in the school year worth it, is the summers. So we'll start with 4th class summer, which is the summer before you start school. It's called swab summer, and even that's really it's not fun at the time, but it's one of those things that you look back on and it's kind of like, well, that was a good time. Like, it's more good memories than bad memories. So it is your initial military training. Kind of can be likened to boot camp. It's not exactly the same. There's a lot of differences, but it's similar in that you're learning how to be in the military, like what military life is like. You're learning military policies, things like that are required for all military members to know. So you have 6 weeks of that, and then you have 1 week on the Coast Guard cutter Eagle, which is the ship in the bottom left corner of this slide here. And awesome experience. Like, usually it's, for some people, most people, I would say, have probably never been out to sea on a ship like that. So it's kind of just to get you out and used to being at sea, but you also get to climb and you get to hopefully go somewhere cool. The picture in the bottom right is me and a bunch of the people in my company in Quebec during our swab summer cruise on Eagle. The following summer is 3rd class summer. It's going to be your first, for most people, your first real taste of what it's like to be in the Coast Guard. For me, I spent my first half of the summer at Station Calumet Harbor in Chicago, which I believe is now just called Station Chicago. But everybody pretty much spends the first half of the summer either at an operational small boat station, which is what Station Calumet Harbor was, or an operational Coast Guard cutter. And then the second phase is on the Coast Guard cutter Eagle again. This time, instead of 1 week, it's 5 or 6 weeks, depending on which phase you have. And so for me, it usually goes some really cool places. So you can see where it went for me. It went to San Juan, Puerto Rico. We actually had an emergency stop in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and then continued to Roatan, Honduras, Cartagena, Colombia, Curacao, and Miami, Florida. And so getting that experience and getting to travel like that is awesome. So the picture in the top right too, just to explain that a little bit, that was getting pepper sprayed at the small boat station, which is a relatively common thing for cadets going out for third class summer. So not a fun experience, but it's out of the way now, so I should never have to do it again. Second class summer really marks your transformation from a follower to a leader. Now you're an upperclassman and you're expected to lead the incoming new fourth class. So during cadre summer, I was in Eagle cadre again. I went back to Eagle for the third time. This time we sailed from New London to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to Salem, Massachusetts, to New York City. And so you can see there, bottom left corner, catching a sunset from the top of the mast in New York City was pretty cool. Another highlight of cadre summer, of second class summer, is what's called coastal sail, where basically you and 6 to 8 other people, other cadets, and one safety officer take a 45-foot sailboat and sail it around the New England coast and pull into some pretty awesome ports. We pulled into Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, but it's really good for developing teamwork and communication, some navigation skills. It's a really great experience. There's also some other things that you do over second class summer. It's just a series of kind of weeks of training. So you spend a week at the range, a week at the CATP, they call it. It's Cadet Aviation Training Program. So you kind of get a taste of aviation, various other things like that. And then first class summer is your final summer at the academy. So you generally either spend 11 weeks on a Coast Guard cutter, or half the time on a cutter and half the time at an internship, which may or may not be Coast Guard related. So I spent my first phase on the Coast Guard cutter Sturgeon Bay, which is out of Bayonne, New Jersey, right across the river from New York City. So we went on some patrols up and down the Hudson. I worked with the engineering division, learned a whole lot. It was awesome. Highly recommend. Even for, I'm interested in aviation, and I still had a great time on cutters. Like, it's a great place to learn. You meet some awesome people, so on and so forth. And then I spent my second phase at the Aviation Logistics Center in Elizabeth City, North Carolina. So I was working for the Aviation Logistics Center Engineering Services Division, Airworthiness Sustainment Branch, which is what that whole long string of letters there is. But I had an awesome experience there too. I worked with 3D printing aircraft parts, doing some studies for that. Got to fly the helicopter that you see in that picture on the bottom right. Got to hang my legs out the back of a cargo aircraft, and just had a great time. Met some great people. Got out to the beach a few times. Had a great time that summer. So I hope this gave you a little bit of information about what it's like to be at the academy, and helps you make a more informed decision if you're looking at the academy. Thank you for your time. Bye.